And yep, today we're going to talk about the new, very cool concept set editor version 2. Um, and I wanted to make sure I extended an invite to our group here to Lindsay Ward, who's on the call. This is like a phenomenal amount of effort and really great work that I believe Lindsay was primarily involved in. So I just wanted to like give credit to her because it's just really cool stuff. I know Amin was involved quite a bit as well. Lindsay, anybody else we should sort of give props to while we're here introducing things?
Maybe the folks on the call who, yourself included, who tested this and added a lot of good feedback as we were trying to work through how to improve this.
Cool. I know
And
Siggy was one of those.
Yeah.
and in the initial meetings for uh, deciding that doing this was a good idea and identifying certain problems with the old system and what kinds of features the new system should have, there would be various people from DI&H and Lindsay, or I don't know who to thank, either Lindsay or Amin. I mean, actually credited me for an idea that I wanted to make sure I got credit for because it came at a very great cost as I was working on my dissertation. It looks little and insignificant and nothing much in this context, but it is the center of something profound.
Well, when we get to that point, make sure you stop us.
You'll see it because it's got my name on it.
Okay.
Which is a little weird, a little embarrassing. I wasn't sure whether to be embarrassed or proud, but
Be proud.
yeah.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. First off, though, I want to briefly ask, is there anyone here who's not already familiar with developing concept sets and using them in the enclave under, well, I guess would be the old system? Like, is this
I have
just
never
totally
developed
new?
one. I use them. I have never developed one.
Okay. I should probably start then with a brief review of maybe of the old concept set editor. And as you guys know, if you want to use a concept set, the way to do it is to sort of look in the data catalog under OMOP code sets. And then there's the ever popular concept set members table, which contains, for a given concept set, like UVA fracture of bone or ARI science outpatient, there might be multiple versions of it, right? So like the first version, maybe somebody created it, but then they decide they want to make an update to it. And because concept sets can be used by everybody, it's not super great to have a concept set that you are using that belongs to someone else or was created by someone else, have it change from underneath of you. So very early on in the whole process, the architects of this stuff decided that it would be good to have a versioning system so that you can either just pin to a particular version, and if there are new versions that come out later, you can decide to use them or not. So this is the sort of table. And then the old concept set editor, oops, which I believe is still accessible, can be found under data catalog, dashboard, and apps, and then the concept set editor. And this was a user interface sort of based on the Atlas tools. If you're familiar with Atlas, that's Odyssey's sort of concept set editor. And I'll just pull it up here and we'll let it load for a minute because it's a little bit slow. But in any case, you can sort of search for concepts down here and you can put them up here and you can sort of see some basic histograms and stuff. But the workflow was a little bit difficult because if you want to create a new concept set, you sort of have to start by typing a name, and then you create the concept set, which sort of populates the information over here. And then you have to like give some extra information, and then you can sort of say update to v1, and that updates the one. If you want to start from a different concept set and create a new version of it, you have to sort of know the name exactly. So I'd have to be able to copy and paste pneumonia or something like that. and then it would search for it and you could sort of click it and do it. So it was a little bit rough and clunky, and there were lots of things that were sort of not quite there, but it worked well, especially given how rapidly they stood it up at the beginning of N3C. So the other thing that's worth noting is that the new concept set editor makes heavy use of the Object Explorer features of the Enclave. And the Object Explorer stuff is objects in the Enclave. You may have run across them. We've done users groups about them in the past. And basically, they're ways to wrap graphical user interfaces around entries in tables. So for example, there's a table which describes the concept set. And for a particular concept set, there's this sort of like graphical UI around it that describes it, but also includes metadata and links out to other objects and so on and so forth. So the new concept set browser is a part of this sort of like object interface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the concept set browser. This hasn't changed a whole lot recently, but this is a graphical UI on top of that concept set members table. So you can sort of search for stuff in the concept set members table directly, or you can search for concept sets and things in here. And I have a pneumonia concept set that I created recently for testing purposes here. And when you open that up, you get that object view. And this is the object view that is the old object view for the concept set. And so if you wanted to edit it, you would have to use that old editor thing. What I believe is going to be released very soon, if it's not already, is the new object view for this particular concept set. And I'm going to change to that right now. And so now under this new object view, there's a sort of a simplified status section here, and you get some simplified properties. There's links out to research projects that utilize this concept set. So in this case, it's just the one research project, and it has this nice little bar over here where you can browse them. And then the object view for that research project is sort of embedded in this tab, which is kind of nice. So you can quickly go from a concept set to a research project and then see the collaborators on that research project or the knowledge graph around that research object and search for other concept sets that are associated with that research object and so on and so forth. The versions for a concept set are also similarly listed over here in this nice little view. And you get sort of the same overview information. And you also get some extra information about the concept set in these tabs compared to what we had before. One of the favorite things, yeah.
I'm sorry. Can you make that transition again? I just wanted to see. Oh, I see. It's those tabs at top. So you're going from the overview to the research projects to the versions, or in whatever order you want.
Yep.
Okay. I missed that when you were doing it.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks.
And so it shows on the left here the list of the versions. And then when you click on a version, you get the object view for the version object and sort of nested within here, right? And so if I had a concept set that had multiple versions, I could click on version 1, version 2, version 3, and I could see the information about each individual version. And I like this kind of like UI nesty thing. I think is works out really well. So for example, within this particular version of this concept set, I can click on the OMOP concepts tab. And now I get nested within that a list of the various OMOP concepts that are in that concept set. And then for any particular one that I click, I get the object view of that particular concept. And so I can quickly see here, for example, that this is the OMOP concept for rubella pneumonia, information about it, links to other things, concepts that map to this concept. as well as properties. And the other kind of neat thing is you can take an individual concept and say, hey, what other concept sets is this one a part of? So you can sort of browse to see other concept sets coming in this way. One really new thing that I like about the new concept set editor and browser in this session, in this view, is that you can view the expressions that were used to create it. So this is something that wasn't possible before, but now this object view for a particular concept set version shows you the expressions that were used to create it. And this is very much like the Atlas interface where I'm saying, okay, pneumonia, which is concept ID, that is not excluded from this concept set. I'm including it. And I'm also including all of its descendants, but none of the things that are mapped to it. On the other hand, this concept set I was developing for testing, I wanted to develop a concept set that was sort of non-influenza pneumonia concepts. So I also included in the set of expressions concepts that are influenza related pneumonia. And then I set them to be excluded. So take this concept set and exclude parainfluenza virus pneumonia, exclude pneumonia due to influenza, and exclude pneumonia due to influenza A. And then I've also checked the include descendants, which I think maybe is a little bit confusing because really what it means is we are excluding the descendants of these as well. So this concept set is built from this one and all of its descendants, except for this one and all of its descendants, this one and all of its descendants, and this one and all of its descendants.
Sean, where do you edit them if we need to? Okay, you're going there next. Okay.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Oh, if you want to edit, make changes to this report, whatever, where do you make the changes? Like say, if I want to make something true. Yeah.
We'll do this in a minute, but what we'll do if we want to edit this is we're actually going to create a new version of the concept set, because you can't edit a concept set after it's been sort of minted and put out there for other people to use, because we don't want people editing concept sets underneath of other people.
Got it.
You could create a new version of this concept set and change the properties of it and then save it.
Wait, just to clarify, and Lindsay can correct me if I'm wrong, but if is draft was yes, then you would be able to edit it right now, right?
That's true, yeah.
Correct.
Even if you were not the person who created it.
Correct, I believe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right.
And you'll see when we go to create a new version, it'll be created as a draft, and drafts are editable while they're being created. And then once you sort of publish it, it's no longer a draft, and then it's no longer editable.
Hey, Sean, this
Yeah.
is Nina. Could you please explain is excluded and include mapped? How do they differ?
Yes, so is excluded. So this is, and I'm gonna go because these are direct mapping in from the Atlas definitions for concept sets. So for example, let's do this over in Atlas. And I'll do this partially because I suspect that there's a lot of good documentation for Atlas, which is Odyssey tool.
No, that would be wrong.
Oh, I'll take it back.
We do have some definitions in the app itself. If you hover over the headers, they'll show up there. And if you expand the sidebar, you can also see them next to, there should be little question mark icons of next to what's this, that give very lengthy descriptions written by Amin that we can also edit if anyone has an issue with.
That is lovely. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is just really great, high quality work.
So this was copied from Atlas, and very few people can remember why is mapped was ever included in the interface at all. So my answer to the question, what's the difference sort of between include mapped and include descendants, or is it included? It's just that is included and include descendants are the relatively straightforward things that Sean described before, and include mapped is something that you shouldn't worry about because it's not very useful.
So is it safer to, sorry, Sean. So is it safer to leave the include mapped false if not useful?
Yeah, you should almost never, I mean, unless you want to do something very unusual, you should just ignore it. And it should always be false.
Okay, thank you.
Doesn't
a-
that depend on whether you're looking for non-standard concepts? Because from what I just read on the pop-up documentation, the mapping in question is a mapping from non-standard concepts to standard concepts. So whether you want to mess with that or not depends on which vocabulary you're really interested in.
No, that's not quite what it means. You can include non-standard concepts in any concept set. What include map will do is that it'll take the standard concepts that you include, and it will also include all of the non-standard concepts that map to it. Now, why you would want to do that may not be entirely clear, because if you are going to use non-standard concepts, you probably know what non-standard concepts you want. In fact, lots of times people would come and make a concept set where they've seen a published paper with a set of ICD-10 codes in it, for instance, and they would want all the SNOMED codes because those are the standard concepts. Well, include mapped will not help you with that. Include mapped would go the other direction, which is why it's sort of why I'm saying, like,
Yeah. And it's worth noting here, I think, as well, that in the concept ID columns that we usually use, the, like condition concept ID column from the condition table, my understanding is there should only be standard concepts in there.
Yeah, it's not strictly true, but yes, that's right. There should only be standard concepts there.
So you might be using more include mapped if you're worried about the mapping from non-standard to standard and you want to use the source concept IDs columns.
And I wonder, is it because there are international implications where some of the countries don't have the CPT codes, or even the RX norm codes are different? I'm curious, and if their raw data sets include their own original codes, maybe that mapping is required.
All right.
Sorry.
In any case, yeah, I think that's worthy of a longer discussion about mapping and standards versus non-standards. But I do think we're pretty clean in our OMOP tables as far as only having standard codes in the concept ID columns. Largely due to the heroic efforts of the DIMH team. So for any individual of these expressions, you can sort of get the details of the expression, the descendants that are found and not found. There's really nice hoverovers and so on and so forth. You can also, from an individual concept set, see the research projects that are involved. There's some review stuff that I'm not prepared to talk about, though there's some process for creating a review that I don't fully know myself yet. And then there's the term usage stuff that was also available in the old concept set editor. And this is really helpful because it gives you sort of an overview of, which concepts in this concept set are used and across different data partners, just to give you an idea of how much the usage of this is in the data. And then there's a concept set overlap tab. So you can sort of say, hey, you're interested in this concept set. You might be interested in sort of these other concept sets, which overlap in a number of terms. And so I can click on one of these and see that 100% of the terms in this other concept set are concepts present in the selected concept set, but not in this concept set. So these things are in the other one, but not in this one. And there's nothing in this one that is not in the other one. And you can sort of browse around and see how it relates to other concept sets. So let's go ahead and draft up a new concept set version for this one. So in this case, I'm in this concept set view here, and I'm going to click on create new version. And one of the things that I also really like about this new interface is that it captures a lot of the metadata that that we want people to capture when they create concept sets, like what's the purpose of the new version? You know, is this a broad or a narrow concept set, or you want some custom description? You know, we want you to try and identify the primary research project, but it does all this sort of at the time when you go to do the thing, as opposed to sort of like asking for all kinds of metadata up front and then asking for it. So I'm going to say demo new version for EUG. This is a, I don't know, is this is the thing I'm not entirely sure of. Are we describing a broad or a narrow concept set? I guess that's fairly broad. I'm covering lots of pneumonia stuff here. I have my example research project. You can optionally pick a domain team. I don't have one handy to select, so I will skip that and then I'll submit that. And what this does is it creates the new version, and the new version is in this draft stage. And you can also see the parent version. So in this case, concept set versions can be sort of tracked as to where they were sort of created from. Now I have the chance to edit these expressions. If I wanted, I could sort of, you know, add or remove them here, and you can sort of select this out, and you can select a particular expression. And this is another new thing that's been added fairly recently, is given an expression, and I believe it incorporates the descendant stuff too. It tells you how many records there are in this. So for example, potentially I want to add a new expression. How do I do that? I'm going to say add concepts. And now I get to the sort of browser for all the different concept sets in OMOP. And I'll say pneumonia. And again, I'm also seeing this record count information. I really like this. This is something that Atlas can be configured to show if it's connected to some data, but we don't have an instance of Atlas that's connected to some data, but this is. And so I can say, all right, let's do, you know, I've decided that I'm interested in modifying this concept set so that it excludes chronic pneumonia. So I'll select that one. There's a few chronic pneumonia cases. I'll add it. And at this point, I get the chance to choose whether or not to exclude them or include them. I'll include them. Do I want to exclude or include the descendants as well? I'll say, yep, let's do descendants as well. And then you also have this chance right here to provide a little bit of annotation. I assume this is the spot you were talking about, Siggy.
Yep, that's it.
I rather like this one. It's a great way because having the expressions that build a concept set is really useful, as opposed to just having the dump of 2,000 concepts that are in the concept set, and then having an optional annotation for why that expression in there I think is really useful. So I'm going to say decided to also exclude chronic. And then you can add the expression here.
Siggy, I like minimizing cognitive load. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's really great. I like this interface.
That's what we all want to do all the time.
It asks for that metadata, but right at the point when you're thinking about why that metadata should be added.
The best way for minimizing cognitive load, though, is just watching television.
You can import from Atlas. So those who are familiar with generating concept sets in Atlas and exporting the JSON, you can import an Atlas JSON expression set right there. And so that's the way to do that. And you'll notice this particular concept set version that I'm developing is in this draft stage. And while it's in a draft stage, it's not going to show up in the concept set members table. So it's continually to be edited based on the comment that Lindsay mentioned. It sounds like others could get in here. If I walk away from my computer and I come back tomorrow and someone else opens up this concept set, they would see this draft version created by me. And then
You can also, oh, sorry. There's also the compare view at the bottom if you wanted to show that as well.
So I can compare this version to that version. Very cool. Version 1. And that gives you a comparison of what's in both, what's unique to one and what's unique to the other. Lovely. The other thing you can do when you're working on this is you can edit the expression directly. So after I've added the expression, let's say my chronic pneumonia, and I've included the descendants. Maybe in this case, I decide for whatever reason, I do want to include everything that might be mapped to it. I can edit the expression via this little edit button right here. So I can go here and I can change those 3 values to do that kind of thing. If I don't like the draft, I can just discard it. Or when I'm done, I can click on the done button. And you can also sort of select multiples of these and edit multiples of them at the same time to change things sort of in bulk. Lindsay, if I have multiples of these selected, is this summary over here just for the one that's selected or for all of them?
That's for the blue highlighted row.
Okay.
So it's your active row only.
Cool, cool. And then once I'm done editing, is there anything else I should that I'm missing in this particular interface?
No, I think you got everything there.
Cool. And then I can click on done. And when you're done, it asks you at the appropriate time, what are the limitations? This is for testing training only. Do not use for real research. And then it also includes some of the provenance information from the concept set that it was based off of, and I can add more information in here, I believe. So I could say like include, or rather new exclude chronic. And then I can submit it. And then it will create the new concept set. And within a few minutes, it will show up in the concept set members table for use. The last thing to know about this is it's a little bit weird to create a new concept set. So it's easy enough to start with a concept set and then create a new version. But how do you create a brand new concept set altogether? Well, the way to do that is from the concept set browser. So you sort of say, I want to create a new concept set. I'll go to the concept set browser, and then there's this new concept set button up here. And Lindsay, if I click this, will it actually ingest data into table somewhere, or should I just for demo purposes?
Clicking that will bring up a form. So doing that will shouldn't do anything to you.
Got it.
But then clicking submit here would add a sample example container.
Right. So at this point, we have this idea of concept set as a container for concept set versions. Clicking this prompts me to create a new concept set container. And you can specify information about it. And you can assign an implementation and an SME. And those are part of the review information that I'm not as clear on. I'm hoping to get maybe Harold to stop by EUG sometime and give a discussion about concept set reviews. But nevertheless, what this will do is it'll create a new container that has no versions in it. So it'll be an empty container, and then you can go and say, create a new version underneath that. I won't show that because it basically creates a concept set. And then when you select the concept set, there will be no version here. There'll just be a create a new version button, and you can create a new one from scratch.
I could speak very quickly to the review thing.
Go for it.
Yeah, so that's how we're getting some sort of quality assurance, is by asking people to review the concept sets once they're made and ready to be reviewed. And they can be reviewed at stages along the versioning. And so the informatician would be the person doing the terminological review, like reviewing that the codes that should be there from somebody who understands the terminology are there. And then the SME the subject matter expert would be somebody who would do the clinical review, who would understand the clinical case that's being modeled in this concept set and whatever phenotypes it appears in. And then the N3C reviewer, I don't remember, but I think that might, I don't know why we have that. So Harold would have to answer that one unless somebody else here knows. But when those three things are assigned, then those people who those roles are assigned to can go into whatever interface it is to put in their review, and their review consists of some comments, and I'm not sure what else besides the comments. Maybe whether they approved it or not.
Let's see. We can create a new review.
Yes. Here I am. I'm already.
Who was that? Right, so there's some review information. What I'm a little bit not sure about is it sounds like the assigned informatician and SME are at the container level, but the reviews are at the individual version level, which makes sense. And then I'm not sure where the status and stage info gets set. Oh, there we are. Change status, create review. Cool. So that's been simplified a bit. All right. So I think that that's basically the tour of the new interface. You know, my overall impression of it is that I love it. The only thing to kind of keep in mind is that in these interfaces, you kind of have to look around the periphery a little bit for buttons and stuff to click and hover over, which is good because there's a lot of buttons and stuff to click and hover over, and not having them all scrunched into one area is a good thing, but it's just something to kind of keep an eye out for as you're looking around. And that's the introduction to that. That should be released really soon, I think.
Beautiful job demoing that, Sean. Thank you.
And thank you for being here to answer some questions, Siggy. And now we have Lisa, who I'm hoping can tell us about a really cool effort to build pre-vetted sort of awesome concept sets that are available for everybody.
Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm Lisa Eskenazi. For those who don't know me, I'm recently joined Johns Hopkins, and I work with the data liaisons. Did a lot of the testing for the concept editor version 2. We've been busy over the new year adding some what we call vanilla concept sets or authoritative concept sets that we've grabbed from various sources and put them into the enclave for people to use. I know we needed more sets. I think we're trying to hit 3,000, right? That was a joke, but I'm trying to share my screen here. And I'll show you what some of these authoritative sets are that you can take advantage of. Sorry, I have a busy window. If you go into the enclave and you want to look at some of the concept sets that we've put in there, we grabbed from VSAC. This is an easy way to search for those. And what you'll see here is maybe 70 or so different concepts that we've grabbed. We started with looking at the CDC comorbid conditions for patients with COVID. And based on those conditions, we went to VSAC to see if there were authoritative sources there that we could grab codes and bring them into the enclave. Maybe 90% of what we looked for, we found and we put in here. So this might be a good place to start. So for instance, if you're looking for, let's pick asthma. Here you've got your concepts that you can export. They are still in the draft format and we are going through validating them now. Is this helpful for anyone? Oh, I'm sorry about the dog.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Lisa, would you be able to speak at all to what VSAC is and how the concept sets are developed at that stage? And are they specifically OMOP in VSAC, or do you guys have to do a translation of them to OMOP?
I'm muting while my husband comes home and the dog stops barking. Let's see.
They're not OMOP. And yeah, they have to be translated to OMOP when we get them. And Value Set Authority Center is a place where anybody in the public can, wait, do you have to have a special author account? I forget. But people and institutions can store value sets, or what we call concept sets, in there. And there are a bunch of, it was originally built to house value sets used in clinical quality measures. And so a lot of these are produced by companies that develop clinical quality measures. And especially the ECQMs are used by, all used by CMS to determine some aspects of reimbursement. And so when we were looking for the authoritative ones, some of the institutions that that make a lot of those and do a lot of research on the way to making them were the ones considered authoritative.
Thank you, Siggy. I pulled up the site here so you can see, anyone can go to it. And let me just show you an example. If we want to look for, again, just pick asthma. Here's all, this column for stewards tell you the group that approved this set. So we probably grab the AHA. You can get SNOMED, you can get ICD-9. We grab the grouping that has both, and that's what we brought into the enclave. So it's hit or miss. There's some things we weren't able to find, or some things we've had to take conditions to meet a certain concept, like chronic lung disease is an example. Couldn't find anything there, but you can find 8 or 9 conditions under that.
So let's say I was interested in asthma, and I see that many of these are based on either specific vocabularies like ICD-10 or SNOMED, and there are some grouping ones that have multiple.
So how?
I also know that our data partners, some are using ICD-10s, and we have them, then SNOMED, and then various other things. So I'm wondering, what's the benefit of this over going to, say, Atlas or the concept set editor and finding all the OMOP descendants for asthma, which would include ICD-9, ICD-10, any other vocabulary that was included by OMOP? Is there any risk of losing things by using VSAC?
Well, sorry.
Go ahead, Siggy, go ahead.
When you go to Atlas, when you go to Atlas, you don't really know who created it, I don't believe. I think maybe in the newer, in the sort of official one, but the public Atlas demo, there are millions of not millions, but thousands of concept sets out there. A lot of them created as tests. A lot of them maybe created and abandoned. So if they're on VSAC, some institution is kind of backing them, and you've got their name and you've got a contact that you can reach. So that's
Let Siggy get her tea. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's
the ones-
exactly, if you want an authoritative set of approved conditions codes, that's the advantage of going to VSAC, as opposed to,
Yeah, I was thinking more as opposed to DIYing it by using the hierarchy.
Looks like
and I'm sorry, Stephanie was going to say something.
yes.
Oh, I was just saying, so VSAC is a repository of all the, the authored value sets created by various different external programs who have very deep knowledge on clinical concepts. So these are the ones that you could actually rely on because they have the authoritative knowledge to say these are the ones that mean, certain disease condition and so forth. So we have provenance of where these were defined from and, who authored it and all that information, the metadata about the concept, we pull in from the VSAC. So when you use one of these VSAC version, for sure these were curated with specific clinic, concepts in mind. As versus if you pick something from Descendant, you don't, no one has gone through the list to make sure that those are, from the Atlas. We don't know how those were created or who created or what the, original intention was from. So we don't have any of those concepts when you pull a version in from Atlas. Whereas from the ones that we pulled it from VSAC, you have the intention, the provenance of where it came from, an actual date it was curated, and all those information that VSAC contains, we pull it into the metadata of the concept set.
right. So Sean, you said, why would you want to use VSAC as opposed to DIYing it? And there are lots of papers out there questioning the quality of concept sets that are used in published papers, where presumably people spent some time validating their concept sets. It's really hard to make a good concept set. And it's really easy to make a concept set. I mean, you can make a concept set in 5 minutes by just going and getting a couple of terms and getting their descendants, and it won't look any different from one that somebody spent months working on. And to Stephanie's point, I think we should be a little careful about overselling it. But yes, people like NCQA, who is one of the organizations we're getting these concept sets from, they spend months and consult a lot of organizations before they publish one of these concept sets. But that doesn't mean that their concept set is going to work well for your query, even though it's the same concept, even though it's the same clinical condition. Nobody can really tell you what's going to work great for your query, but what we can tell you is that the people who put this concept set together had both clinical knowledge and terminological knowledge, and they went through an extensive quality assurance process.
The translation from the VSAC code set, which has both ICDs as well as NOMAD, to the OMOP, where does it happen? Does it have to happen once we import?
Sorry, I was just reading Sean's comment. I missed that.
Yeah, the question is, it's a VSAC, the value set, they appear to have both ICDs and SNOMED. And when we import, and where does the translation happen to the OMOP code set IDs? So does it happen at the level of when we import it to either Atlas or to the enclave, or it has to be done before that using tools from Atlas, or where does it happen, the translation?
Yeah, so
it happens.
Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
It happens in the enclave.
Oh, okay.
Using the OMA vocabulary tables. That's the latest version that is published by the Athena, and that's we update weekly onto the enclave.
So, and again, it's
So-
automated using the tools.
Yes, so
Okay.
ICD-10 codes is specified in the VSAC concept sets, gets translated to the SNOMED codes by using the map to relationship within the OMAP vocabulary tables.
Got it. Thank you.
Very cool. Lisa, is it so finding those in there right now is it's easiest to do that by searching for VSAC?
It is right now. VSAC won't be the only authoritative source that we use, but that's what we started with. So if you want to take a look to see what's there, and I would welcome any feedback, especially from users who are starting to use these, to let us know what you think and what would be helpful.
Could I ask, do we have any sense of how wide is the adoption of these authoritative code sets outside of N3C? I'm just wondering about, you know, someone from N3C publishes a paper and says, well, the definitions we use for this paper, we got, you know, we use the VSAC definitions because we wanted to make our research comparable to research that was done outside of our particular work group. But that only, you know, that sounds wonderful, except if there's actually very little uptake for the VSAC concepts codes, that wouldn't make much of a comparison. So I was just wondering if you have any information about how widely they are used outside of the enclave.
It's funny, Hannah, you're like the third person who asked me that question today.
Oh,
So-
I'm sorry to repeat all those other people.
No, I think it's highlighting an important fact here is how did the concepts, what kind of, what's the word? That, how much effort has gone into these stewards in selecting the codes, and what's their process in selecting them, and how is that vetted? And I don't have the answer to that yet.
Well, to be honest, that's not my question. My
Oh, I'm
question is,
sorry.
no, I wasn't asking, I'm certainly not inquiring about the quality of these concept codes, because you've convinced me they're high quality.
Oh, I
What I was
misunderstood.
wondering was, are they such high quality that everybody and his brother decides to use them because they're so great, and that it could, the VSAC concept sets could become kind of a lingua franca for EHR research if a lot of different research groups start using the same concept sets. Then you could actually compare one person's research output to another person's research output. At least they'd agree on what the definition of the disease is if they're working on the same disease. But that's only if they choose to use the same concept sets.
Is that nirvana there?
So, Hannah, the question you're asking is the question that my PhD research is on, and the position that you're sort of advocating is, I call the vision or dream of reuse, and that has been the vision since the beginning of VSAC and other code set repositories, that we would have not just the quality of however hard people worked on them before they went in, but we would have lots of people using them and reusing them and hopefully improving them through reuse. The problem is that the uses of the value sets in VSAC are not the same as the uses that you're talking about and that we're talking about generally, because we are using these value sets as analytic code sets or concept sets. We're using them to select records out of a repository that has data from however many 100-something data partners who might be using the various concepts in different ways, and the concepts, you know, there are particulars of what the researchers want. You know, there are lots of nuances in what the researchers want, that in the questions that they're asking, that may be very different from what CMS wants to know if they're trying to figure out if you as a provider have been following good clinical practices. So the answer to your question is these have not been taken up in the way that you're suggesting, but I think, I mean, the goal is to get the kind of uptake that you're talking about, and we at N3C have a better chance than anybody has ever had in the past of getting that kind of uptake. But no, VSAC doesn't have it yet.
We do use it quite a lot to build tools like clinical decision support system tools, because most of the EHRs use the ICDs and the SNOMED, and that's what VSAC is made of. So it's a direct import. We don't have to translate.
Right, but you're using it, if I'm understanding, in a data capture context.
That's right. And data capture as well as to provide a decision support within the EHR environment.
Yeah, so the research environment is very different because you don't know what, when you're in data capture, you want a really good quality code set to make sure that people are only putting in codes that are related to whatever that data element is. But in a common data model, you don't have those very specific kinds of data elements. You have condition, which is like everything. And when you're trying to find just diabetes within condition, then you have to imagine, like, what are all the different ways that there would be an indication of diabetes in any of these EHR systems from all these different data partners.
That's right. That's right. So there are two different aspects here. One is at the level of the EHRs and any tools that are built for EHRs, whereas what we are discussing here is for analytics, data warehouse and data analytics.
Yeah.
And another a consistent way we're trying to aim is that we use a concept set that can be reused and repeatable in terms of finding the cohort. So that's another angle that we're going for, using a published concept set that defines certain disease condition, and that your query can be repeated to find those same cohort with those same series of disease condition or medication or what have you.
Hannah, do you feel like your question was thoroughly answered?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Was it over answered?
No, I mean, I get the picture.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Lisa, and thank you again, Lindsay. This effort around concept sets and the curation and management of them has been something that's developed over a long time in N3C, and it's nice. I think really good work has come out of it, and it does make it this stuff more reusable and accessible. And I know that the concept sets that are defined there, not all of them are used broadly, but some of them are used quite broadly, and I think that wouldn't have happened without these cool tools. Any last thoughts before we call it, or questions? All right. See you in 2 weeks. Well, see you next week for open discussion. And then in 2 weeks, I believe I have Joanna. We have Joanna on the schedule to talk about her new person level table template.
Great. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks so much, Sean.
Bye, everyone.